Zando Penguin Audio presents Cop, Breaking the Fixed System of American Policing by Mac Muir and Greg Finch. Narrated by Phil Morris.
Note from the authors. This is a work of non-fiction. Most events depicted in this book occurred between 2016 and 2022. Except where otherwise indicated, these events were recounted to us by first-hand witnesses or drawn from moments we experienced ourselves. The facts in these investigations are precisely accounted for. Where applicable, facts have been carefully cross-referenced with an array of public records. However, the names and identifying information of the officers, complainants, witnesses, their children, their relatives, and any other New York City employees that appear in the book have been changed to protect their privacy, unless such information was reported on or otherwise made public. The opinions expressed here are our own, and not necessarily the policy of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, CCRB. In our investigations, we sought to corroborate individual recollections. In instances where there were discrepancies between accounts and no video footage to settle the difference, we depict the most plausible version of events based on a preponderance of the evidence, the CCRB evidentiary standard, and the standard burden of proof in civil court. When we were unable to determine what happened, we note as much. We condense only those moments we experienced firsthand, snippets of interviews, trainings, and everyday office experiences solely to make the reading experience more accessible, and we do so sparingly. However, we always include material facts and aim to capture the spirit of what happened, and the events depicted in this book are faithfully represented by using contemporaneous notes, the best of our recollections, and our skill sets as professional investigators. We learned the facts of each case through the course of our official duties. What we saw included waste, inefficiency, corruption, criminal activity, and conflict of interest in the activities of New York City agencies. Motivated by a desire to improve our democracy, we wrote some of it down. Prologue. Spring 2017. Parked cars line a sunny residential block in Harlem, New York City. Sirens blare. An SUV, hazard lights flashing, screeches to a halt. Ron Davis, a man in his early 20s, opens the driver's side door, jumps out, slams the door behind him, and sprints forward. He weaves through a maze of police vehicles, fire trucks, and emergency workers. When he reaches an ambulance's open rear doors, he leaps inside, knocking an EMT to the ground. The EMT's supervisor shouts in vain. Inside, Davis looks down at a stretcher. His 6-month-old daughter looks up and wails. Davis pulls her from the stretcher restraints, cradles her against his chest, and sobs, "My baby! My baby! My baby!" 10 minutes earlier, Davis had received a phone call from his mother, who told him that his baby daughter had been found unconscious in a bathtub. It was a miracle that she was still alive. The EMT grabs Davis's shoulders and tells him to put her down. "Fuck you!" The EMT tries to assure Davis that his daughter will be all right. Tentatively, Davis hands her over and steps out of the ambulance. The EMT's supervisor stares at him, bewildered. Officers and firefighters spill out of the lobby of a brick building nearby, returning to their vehicles as if the incident were all over. Davis walks toward his car. Davis's cousin, Terrence, emerges from the brick building. Spotting Davis, he bolts across the street and wraps a consoling arm around his cousin's shoulder. "Who put her in the bathtub?" Davis asks. Terrence says it was Davis's girlfriend. Davis vents, a little louder than he intended. "I'ma fuck somebody up. I can't believe that bitch." Nearby, an NYPD lieutenant sits in the front passenger seat of a blue and white sedan. He overhears Davis's venting, then groans. Tossing aside the report he's completing, he steps out of his cruiser, scans the maze of emergency vehicles, and strides toward the sound of Davis's voice. 2 officers follow close behind. Still distraught, Davis fumes to Terrence. The fuck is wrong with her?" The lieutenant emerges from behind a fire engine and advances toward Davis. "The fuck is wrong with you?" In a cramped room, stale with fluorescent light, an investigator pressed the space bar on his computer. A pause symbol appeared over the center of the screen, and the surveillance footage stopped. The investigator knew what happened next in the video, but still turned to the lieutenant and asked, At this moment, what was happening? Across a cheap wooden table, the lieutenant sat flanked by two union attorneys from the LBA. Another more tenured investigator was carefully taking notes in a spiral notebook. On the table was an audio recorder, red light blinking. An old computer monitor displayed silent surveillance footage. Although the video had no sound, the investigator had interviewed 10 civilians and officers to piece together the missing dialogue. As always, the NYPD compelled this lieutenant to answer the investigator's questions, but he knew that his answers could not be used against him in criminal court. According to New York's Civil Rights Law 50-A, all records of this incident would be hidden from the public. If the investigator were to recount this interview to a friend, let alone a member of the press, he could be fired and face misdemeanor charges. Of the few who would ever hear this lieutenant's testimony, the most important was a deputy commissioner in the NYPD, and the lieutenant knew his audience. Well, at this moment, I was aware that my cops had just saved the life of a drowning infant, and that an unknown individual was on the street acting erratically, flailing his arms, and threatening to kill a woman. Was there anything else you observed? Well, I feared for my safety. Okay. Why? I feared for my safety because this guy threatened to kill someone. Did you know who he threatened? No. So, what about this threat caused you to fear for your own safety? One of his attorneys interjected. This guy threatened to kill someone. What more do you want? In the dance of an officer interview at the CCRB, an investigator needed to prevent the union attorneys from throwing off the tempo. They were known to yell, scream, and interject with little recourse. Sometimes they tapped their officers' knees as a signal to say, "I don't recall." Other times they went for personal insults, calling investigators children, incompetent, a waste of taxpayers' money, or worse. Investigators who were women and people of color were known to be treated with far less courtesy than their white male colleagues. Privately, this investigator believed that much of the attorney's conduct could have led to censures from the New York State Bar Association. But how would the Bar Association ever find out? None of this was in the public record. Every interview unfolded in a secret, half-regulated universe. These two LBA attorneys, however, were notably professional, just trying to get their lieutenant out of a jam. Counsel, please don't interrupt. The attorney went quiet, and the investigator continued. Again, what about this threat caused you to fear for your own safety? I think someone making any threatening statements in the street makes them a threat to everyone. Okay. Was there any other reason you feared for your safety? A crowd started to form. Can you show me on the screen where the crowd is? Oh, you can't see it in the video. There was no crowd. Okay. Any other reason you feared for your safety? No. Sometimes, well after an interview, an officer might conveniently remember other factors that caused them to fear for their safety. Perhaps a year later at trial, this lieutenant would remember a suspicious bulge, therefore fearing that Davis was armed. Maybe he would remember a threatening statement that no one could corroborate or refute. In light of these new memories, his conduct might appear much more reasonable, and the entire case could fall apart. So each time the investigator asked, "Any other reason?" and he replied, "No," the lieutenant locked himself into a statement he couldn't conveniently reassemble. The investigator tapped the spacebar, and the video continued. All eyes returned to the screen. The lieutenant takes 2 quick steps toward Davis, who stands firmly in place. The investigator paused the video, by this point certain that the lieutenant had never seen the footage. The agency had pulled it from a surveillance camera at a construction site. As usual, Internal Affairs hadn't bothered to do the same. Earlier you stated Mr. Davis charged at you. Is that depicted here? Yeah, said the lieutenant, pointing at the computer screen. It's right there. It wasn't. Understood. The investigator tapped the spacebar, and the footage continued. They are close. Davis steps to his left, away from the lieutenant. Tap. Pause. At this moment, did you say anything? 3 civilians had reported that the lieutenant yelled, "You little motherfucker!" The other officers couldn't recall what he said, but didn't deny it either. I said, "What are you doing? We're trying to get your baby to the hospital." Did you say, "You little motherfucker"? I don't recall. That wasn't a no. And what did he say?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?